Hello everyone. Welcome to the StoryHolic channel. Today I am going to tell you the story of the 1971 film Death in Venice, which was the film starring Bjorn Andersson. I leave you here in the upper right corner of the screen, the link to the video in which I tell his story, in case you haven't seen it yet, but before starting leave your like, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new video here on the channel. The story begins with Gustav von Aschenbach, a renowned composer who is going to spend his vacations in a luxury hotel in Venice after an emotional and artistic crisis that has left him very weak. The doctor told him that he would be fine after a few days of complete rest, but throughout the beginning of the film, Gustav looks uncomfortable in place and quite thoughtful. As night falls, he prepares to enter one of the hotel lobbies, but before leaving he kisses the photographs in the room, the first of a girl and the second of an adult woman. In the lobby there were many people waiting for their reservations in the hotel restaurant. Without having much to do, he begins to look around until he notices a family where the girls wore dark and not very flashy clothes, but next to them was Tadzio, a boy about 13 years old. Gustav can't help but be impressed by the boy's appearance and stares at him without the family noticing, until the family retires to the restaurant. But just before he leaves, the boy looks back at him. Once he gets a table, the composer continues to watch the boy from afar, paying little attention to his surroundings. The film then cuts back before the trip, where we see Gustav arguing with a friend about beauty and true art, but he seems bummed out that he's not achieving the standard he wants with his music and ends up arguing with his friend. The next morning, at breakfast, the musician's eyes follow the boy again, who looks at him with an enigmatic expression. The musician follows the boy to the beach and watches him play in the sand with the other children. However, Tadzio and his friend walk away from the group and receive a kiss from the other boy. This makes Gustav smile and exude joy. Some interpret it as happiness to see Tadzio having fun, while most believe it is because Gustav was happy about the possibility that the boy was homosexual. He stays on the beach until the family leaves. And I have to say that face gave me goosebumps. Gustav returns to his room and has a stressful moment. He recalls another argument with his friend, where his friend accuses him of having emotional problems and avoiding direct contact with people, not to mention unattainable perfectionism. At that moment I had the impression that the friend is more spontaneous and seeks more emotion when he plays, while Gustav seems to be a more technical musician. The next morning Gustav is stressed about his departure back, but just as he was about to leave the hotel he finds Tadzio smiling at him, which makes Gustav thoughtful and even a little sad to be leaving Venice. But for being late, he ends up missing his train. He pretends to be nervous about the situation, but smiles at the possibility of staying longer at the hotel. That's when things start to get weird, as a sick man dies in the middle of the station, leaving him confused. On the way back, the musician seems more relaxed, and he goes back to his routine of following the little ones with his eyes. Back on the beach, he remembers the woman and girl in the portraits he kissed at the beginning of the film. He is playing with them in a beautiful backyard and kisses the woman, who is possibly his wife, and together they start a family. The musician gets up and begins to take notes, while watching the boy, probably because he began to feel inspired again with Tadzio, kind looking like a Greek god. The next morning, Gustav almost exchanges a word with Tadzio, but immediately gives up when he walks away. Then he returns to observe from a distance. The composer then begins to suspect that something may be going on. He questions the hotel manager about the stories he has heard about the spread of a disease, without concrete information about it. The manager denies it and says that there is nothing to worry about, that small isolated cases abound. Gustav's persecution continues during the following days in various parts of Venice, but the musician begins to notice that in various parts of the city people are using cleaning products on the walls. He tries to ask the reason for all this, but it is completely ignored. That same night, a group of musicians shows up at the hotel, and after they finish playing, they ask the guests for money. Gustav, who was getting uncomfortable, asks the singer why they are disinfecting Venice, but the singer says that it's just a caution and that's nothing serious. And he plays like crazy again, this time laughing a lot. Still unconvinced, Gustav goes to the train station and asks why Venice is being disinfected. The man hesitates a bit, but decides to tell the truth. About a cholera epidemic that has been migrating from one country to another and has now reached Venice. Several have died and hospital beds are no longer available. But the government and the neighbors keep it a secret, since the news would put an end to tourism, which is one of the main sources of income for the city. Gustav is startled by the news and runs to warn Tadzio's family, and he seems very worried. Then the mother calls Tadzio, and Gustav gets a chance to run his hand through his hair, but in the end, it was just a glimpse of the musician imagining the whole conversation with the family. He then begins to cry and remembers seeing his daughter's coffin, and together with the woman they break into tears. After that, he goes to a salon where the hairdresser gives him a rejuvenation. Shortly after, he tries to see Tadzio one last time and maybe say something. Walking the streets, they now seem to be in a darker, more morbid mood. Until it starts to feel bad. He has one last memory of a concert where things went wrong and runs to his room where his wife tries to comfort him and his friend says his music is boring now. Gustav even has nightmares about this moment. Newly made up, the musician goes to the beach, which seemed to be empty, occupied only by Tadzio's family. He sits and watches the boy play wrestling with his friend. The musician is annoyed that the boy looks a little irritated, but he can't get up or say anything. His makeup runs down his face and he dies there on the beach just looking at Tadzio one last time. And the movie ends. In the video I made of the documentary about Bjorn's life, there is a moment where the character is not described as a human, but as an angel of death, always enticing Gustav to stay in Venice instead of run away from the pandemic. If he hadn't missed the train, he would have survived, and that was very clear in the story. Well, my take on the movie is not the kind of movie for family fun. If you put aside any previous concepts you may have of the film, you can see the other interpretation that is so much talked about, which is a film about the search for artistic perfection that only nature can create, and the film also stands out for the atmosphere that it has in the city, where something mysterious and somewhat dark seems to be happening, with a tragic and playful ending. But it's still a 50-year-old man who was following a boy, and some scenes will really bug you. When he put on the makeup, maybe that's how he saw himself, but that's how some people came to see him. A curiosity is that the film was inspired by a book by Thomas Mann from 1912. Thomas was a man married to a woman who revealed homosexual tendencies that he left well documented in his diaries. Thomas's wife said the idea behind the book came about during the couple's royal vacation at the Grand Hotel des Bains in Venice. Every detail of the story, beginning with the man in the graveyard, is taken from experience. In the dining room on the first day, we saw the Polish family, who looked exactly as my husband described them. The girls were dressed quite stiff and stern, and the very charming and handsome boy of about 13 years old was wearing a sailor suit with an open neck and very nice bows. It caught my husband's attention right away. This boy was extremely attractive, and my husband always watched him with his partners on the beach. He didn't chase him all over Venice, which he didn't, but he was fascinated by the boy, and he thought about him often. Declared Katia, his wife. The boy in question was Władysław Mose, a Polish nobleman who seems to have had no problem with the story, even telling the media that he was considered a beautiful boy at the time and that the author really detailed the clothes he was wearing very well, the jokes he had on the beach with his friends and everything else. The only thing he had was his nickname, which in the movie was Tadzio, while in real life it was Adzio. Good to know this story didn't ruin everyone's life, right? Well, today's video ends here. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.